the meeting would please come to order. We got a long agenda, and Representative Kaiser just reminded me, and this is really interesting. She said, you remember last year we had our first joint meeting. We were sitting here and had the same thing, a tornado alert. So I don't know what, there's something about these joint meetings. They're really powerful, I think. A lot of wind, I think, is what's involved. So we're glad to get everybody together, all this hot air. But if we hear anything, we're in touch with the security. If we hear anything, we'll let you know, but everything's good. They say go ahead. There's no danger right now, so if we do, we'll let you know. And women and children first down the stairs. Legislators, ride the elevator. Okay. Remind everyone, please, if you would, turn your cell phones off. Please do that. And at no time, we are being televised, at no time are you to come up into here. If you need to see anyone, if you please raise your hand and stand over here. Courtney, where are you, Courtney? Abby, all our group there. And Hillary, where are you there? They will come down and take a message to anyone up here you need to give a message to. So please do that. For all our guests that are here, restrooms are out the door to your right. You'll find them. Or you can go to your left, but you can't get back in. But you can go to your right, and there are restrooms and everything down there. And if any of you need water, stop by any office. They'll be glad to give it to you, I'm sure. But before we get started, I'd like to ask Representative Nix, if he would please open our meeting with prayer. Okay. Representative Nix, what number? 18?
18.
All right.
Let's pray. Father, we would pause right now and pray your mercies on those who are experiencing the severe weather. Lord, that you would protect and oversee and guide those who are responding. And Lord, we just ask your presence with us now as we discuss education in our state. Lord, guide our hearts and our minds to seek those solutions that would be best for the children that we seek to serve. For it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Representative. What we're doing today, the first part of our meeting is going to be a joint meeting with the Senate. And we have plenty of seats. You people come on up. The front rows are not special, so anybody come on up and sit down if you're not afraid to be up front. And but we're going to have a joint meeting. The purpose of the meeting today is information. We're so happy, and we're going to do some introductions before, but so happy to have our superintendent of schools here with us to talk to us about really some important things, our teacher evaluation, also our report card and things. We want some answers to some questions for some legislation that we're introducing this year, and so we're talking about that. But before we start, I think it's important for us to get to know one another, so I'd like to ask the committee, if they would, senators, representatives, whatever you are, because we're going to be working together, but we're just glad to have you. So if you let's start on the bottom down here with Representative Sims. If you'll start, introduce yourself, tell us where you're from. No, she's our representative. I know what I'm saying. She'll always be my representative. I love her. She is a senator, though. She did decide to leave us, but I'm going to ask Senator Sims to start it. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about your experience where we know about you. But make it within 30 seconds, okay? Give us your number, and we'll start from there. 12, all right?
Thank you. I am Senator Freddie Powell Sims, representing District 12, Southwest Georgia. I have 11 counties, and I'm not about to try and name all of those counties. Probably take me more than those 30 seconds. But I am a retired educator, so I'm glad to have the opportunity to serve on the Education Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You heard of Albert and Costello, Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, and Frickin' Fred. Next senator, would you please go?
That would be me. I'm Senator Fran Miller. I am Senator Sims' driver. and I'm from District 40. I'm Daisy.
Number 9, Mark. 10, okay.
Nope, yep. I'm Margaret Kaiser. I represent downtown Atlanta, Fulton County, and City of East Point.
Thank you. All right, over here on my left, what's your number, Senator? Yes, sir.
My name is Vincent Ford. I serve in the state senate. I represent the 39th district, which goes from Union City to Buckhead, including College Park, Union City College Park, East Point, and parts of the city of Atlanta.
You've been on the Education Committee a long time, too, haven't you, Senator?
1997.
I thought so. Yeah, thank you. All right. Representative Benton, let's start with you. What's your number?
I'm Tommy Benton. I represent House District 31, which is part of Jackson County.
Okay. Next, what's your number?
16.
All right. Senator?
Jesse Stone, District 23, Senate District. I'm from the Augusta area, represent 11 counties in east central Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the chairman and the senior members on this committee. I'm certainly humbled to be serving with you. My name is Mike Glanton, and I represent District 75, which is Clayton County. I'm originally from Rome, Floyd County, and I look forward to serving in the great state of Georgia here on this committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
18, gotcha.
Yes, I'm Randy Nix. I am House District 69, which is parts of Troup and Carroll and all of Heard counties.
Okay.
Kevin Tanner, State Representative, District 9, which is Northwest Forsyth County, Dawson County, and Lumpkin County.
David Cassis, District 107, which is in Gwinnett County, right in between Lawrenceville, Snellville, and Lilburn.
Brooks Coleman from Gwinnett County, District 97. Been in the House 20 years, on the Education Committee 20 years, and so maybe I'll learn one day. I hope so. Okay.
I'm Lindsey Tippins for Senate District 37, that's Northwest Cobb County.
Representative Mike Dudgeon, District 25, which is most of southern Forsyth County and parts of Johns Creek and North Fulton.
Valerie Clark, House District 101, which is Greater Gwinnett County, and I have Lawrenceville and Suwanee, and was an educator for over 100 years.
Wonderful. All right.
John Wilkinson.
Wait a second. Let me get you turned on here. All right.
John Wilkinson. I represent Senate District 50, and it's comprised of the 8 most scenic counties in the state in northeast Georgia.
I'm on here. Okay, Chuck Huffstetler, new senator, District 52, Rome, Cartersville, Calhoun area, the area that's getting pounded right now with the weather. And spent 8 years in local government up there, but the most important thing I can tell you is that I'm the senator for Dr. Barge. Didn't say he voted for me, but I'm the senator.
Representative Chandler.
I'm Joyce Chandler, and I'm a new state representative from District 105. I can talk loud without it. My teacher voice, which is Gwinnett, parts of Grayson, parts of Lawrenceville, and the Gwinnett part of Loganville. I am a retired teacher and school counselor, but I wasn't in education as long as Valerie.
28. Thank you. Amy Carter, state rep from Valdosta, represent 3 counties, Lowndes, Brooks, and Thomas counties. I'm an active public school teacher, and I still believe to be the only active public school teacher in either chamber. CTAE is my area of teaching, so glad to be here again for my 7th year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jan Jones, State Rep from House District 47, which is North Fulton, and this is my 11th year.
All right, did we get everyone on the committee now? Anyone come in late? I would just like for everybody to get an idea. I think it's important for us to know, anybody out there, this is your, now I'm not going to call on all the lobbyists and all, but anybody, this is your first time you've ever attended an education meeting. Stand up. Let us just see. You've ever attended one of these. First time. Let us see. Welcome. All right. You have a real treat in store for you. Do we have any students that are college students or anyone visiting from any schools? We always like to recognize them. So, okay. Yeah, all right. Very welcome, our students. We're always proud to have y'all. Thank you. We're glad to have you. Is any of your reps up here, guys? Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, we're glad to have y'all with us. Okay. Well, at this time, we want to give him all the time we have. Our agenda is this. We plan to hear from our state school superintendent. We're covering some very important areas, as I said, the report card that's going to be vital to the House bill that we'll be having on flexibility and accountability that's coming soon. Also, that report card is critical. Also, we're looking at the teacher evaluation component that's coming out of the state board office, and also I think the governor's office is coming out of that. The teacher evaluation component we're going to have. So, and then he will be talk to us about that, the indicators for teacher progress. He's going to hit on that, and then any questions you may have. So jot down your questions if you would. Let him finish, and then we'll let you ask all that. I told him to leave plenty of time for questions from this committee, and we can do that. Now, we just had a new senator come in, so introduce yourself, and then we'll move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Senator Donzella James, 35th District, and a former educator. Well, always an educator, once an educator, right? And so I'm happy to be on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So without any further delay, anybody else say anything else they want to say? After we have this presentation, the Education Committee will then will adjourn this meeting, and the House Education Committee will have their regular meeting for about 15, 20 minutes. We'll organize our house, okay? At this time, I'll turn it over to you, Superintendent Bart.
All right, I am certainly not going to do all the talking because you'd be bored to death. But just for kind of scheduling purposes, I've got 2:15. We're going till 4. Is that correct? You want our presentation to end about 3:45? 3:30, 3:45. Okay. All right. Very good. We'll try to keep on track. There's a lot that we want to go over with you guys. There's a lot of work that has been done since the last time we talked. There's a lot of work still to do. And you know, I talked with Representative Coleman earlier, and we talked about this meeting, and one of the things that we wanted to talk about first was the teacher evaluation system, because you know there was an article that came out in the newspaper. It talked about, you know, maybe this isn't working very well, and what folks need to understand is that that evaluation system is only a small piece of the teacher effectiveness, teacher and leader effectiveness measures that we are working on. What we do know at this time, you know, going through 10 years of No Child Left Behind, and one of the pieces of No Child Left Behind was an emphasis on highly qualified teachers. And districts, schools had to have 100% of their teachers highly qualified. Well, what we know, and I know, having been a high school principal, is I can have a highly qualified teacher who is highly ineffective. And so the effectiveness measure is looking at what's going on in the classroom, not just looking at what the teacher's doing, but our students learning. So the evaluation system that has been piloted, and keep in mind we're talking about a pilot, okay? You pilot things to get the kinks and the bugs worked out. So part of the reason why you had a situation where probably more teachers came up in this new evaluation system as proficient or exemplary than what statistically you would think is you've got schools right now that are piloting a new system, but because we're talking about a new model that is a pilot, you are still having to run the old system parallel along to it for validity and reliability purposes and employability and contracts and those types of things for legal purposes, okay? Those two systems are very, very different. The old system, you were looking at two options. A principal categorized that teacher as either satisfactory or unsatisfactory. The new system is looking at 4 different stages that that teacher can be in. So it was quite possible for a teacher to be in the level 2, for lack of a better term, where they are needing development, but and so where do you put a teacher who needs development? Do you put them as satisfactory or unsatisfactory? They weren't the lowest on this one, but then you put, so they were kind of in a catch-22 on how do you do this. So as we move forward, I think that you will see that this system is a really well-constructed system that is truly looking at work that is happening in the classroom and that is the right work for us to look at. And in addition, the effectiveness measure that will be the outcome is not just the principal's evaluation. In the end, the full evaluation system is not only teacher evaluation, but it's also student learning or growth. What percentage or did your students learn? Where were they at the beginning of the semester, and where were they at the end of the semester? And using student growth
as 50% of that overall effectiveness measure for the teacher. So the evaluation system that was reported on the newspaper, again, was just a portion of the overall system. So at that, I'm going to turn this part of the presentation over to Avis King, who is our Deputy Superintendent in this area that has been boots on the ground working with districts as we pilot the Teacher and Leader Key system. Avis.
Thank you, Dr. Barge, and thank all of you, because I'm very happy to give this update today on Teacher and Leader Key's effectiveness system. And first of all, I have to say that this update is brought to you through the support and the hard work of many people. First of all, our districts, who are piloting and implementing Teacher and Leader Keys. And they're also providing the feedback that we need to improve these systems. And next, I'd like to also thank the Teacher and Leader Effectiveness Department under the leadership of Martha Ann Todd. These folks have done a tremendous job. We've also collaborated with our other departments at the department, including Race to the Top, Curriculum, and Assessment. And last but not least, we have had a great collaboration with the Governor's office, and so we appreciate all of their support. Now, I've had the privilege of working on this work for the last 2 years. I am a career educator, and some of you are career educators from what you said earlier. I started out in evaluation with the TPAI. Does anybody remember that? And several of you are nodding, so you can tell how old I am. I also was evaluated using the GTEP and the GLEI, so I have been on both sides of the evaluation fence. And I'm here to tell you that what we are doing now gives so much more richer dialogue and conversation, and that I believe we're heading in the right direction in teacher and leader evaluation in this state. Now, you have a red folder, and I want to make sure that you have the handouts that are in that red folder. If you'll open it up, the very first page I would like for you to look at. Why are we doing this? Why is it important to me? Why is it important to you? I start out with this slide because it brings me back to the core purpose of why we do everything. Of course, our students. And I want to draw your attention to the first sheet in your folder. It lays out why Georgia needs a single statewide educator evaluation system. Does everyone have that? Now, I know you've heard the research. Teacher and leader are the most important people in that building to that student. They have the most influence on that student. You know, the influence of an ineffective teacher can derail a child's education. And as referenced in the first paragraph that you have in front of you, his or her earning potential. An ineffective leader in a building can keep teachers from reaching their potential and students from achieving their best. Now, at the bottom of that page are comments from teachers and leaders. I'm not going to read all of them, but these are folks that have participated in the Teacher and Leader Keys evaluation systems. And their comments really talk about the culture shift that is going on in our schools. They're talking about higher expectations for teachers and for students, getting real-time feedback on their performance, and getting targeted professional learning, and a focus on student achievement. It is very, very important that they get this feedback. I do need to share with you, I was at a regional focus meeting a couple of weeks ago. We're having these meetings so that we can get back information from the districts that are implementing Teacher Keys and Leader Keys. We want to know how it's going. Had a principal come up to me and she said, Avis, she said, my teachers, you know, they're hungry. She said, no, they're starving for feedback. They want to know what they need to do a better job to educate their students. It is very important. I wanted to share that with you because that has stayed with me over the last several weeks. So, Georgia students, all 1,702,758 of them, they deserve effective teachers and leaders every year. And you know, our teachers and leaders, they deserve the opportunity for quality feedback and for targeted professional learning that will improve their performance and ensure for us an effective educator workforce in this state. So, how did we develop these systems? I'm going to give you a really short historical perspective of what has happened over the last 2 years. 2 years ago, Georgia had just received the Race to the Top grant. There had been some initial work done on a new teacher and leader evaluation system in the form of what was called class keys and leader keys. Some of you may remember it. This gave us a really, really good start. It was actually piloted in the districts. The district I was in actually piloted it, And the only problem was it was really too cumbersome to use on a day-to-day evaluation. So the feedback that we got was that it was way too large, had too many standards, too many elements. When Race to the Top came in, the grant and the funds provided the opportunity to expand the work in a big way and to add the other components to form a comprehensive evaluation system. You know, there were 26 districts that signed on to Race to the Top, and the goal was to get these systems ready for the 26 Race to the Top districts to pilot. We had 3 steering committees. We had an evaluation steering committee. We had an other measures committee that looked at student learning objectives and surveys and value add and growth. And the major point I want to make here is these committees were composed of a wide variety of stakeholders. They included Race to the Top district personnel, GLSSI, PSC representatives, RESA, our teacher organizations, district human resources, and higher ed, among many, many other agencies and external experts. And the goal here was to make sure everyone was at the table during the development of the systems. That was very important to us. And during this time and throughout the last 2 years, we've strived to listen to the feedback and to improve these systems as we move toward a 2014-2015 state implementation, because that's our goal. Now, the work of the committee was very successful. We streamlined class keys. We streamlined leader keys. We took it down to 10 standards.
You know, let me ask you to do something for me. You got some educators here, but you got some that are saying to me, ever to speak in Duluthanese, not educational jargonese. But when you talk about keys, tell us what they are. Tell us what you mean by RESA. You know, some of these things, that would help us out, because some of these terms, some people may not know what you're talking about.
RESA is our regional educational
support
agency. Sure. We have, you know, we give the CRCT in 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And then we give our end-of-course test in high school. And those would be your tested subjects. But, you know, art, music, PE, those are non-tested subjects. And so those teachers have really never been part of the assessment process. So this is new to them. French. What's another one?
Well, any of your CTE courses,
Right.
those are all courses that are not tested with a high stakes test like the CRCT
Right.
or the so that you don't have data.
Right.
You could do the growth percentile list.
But the student learning objectives would cover your non-tested subjects. So we are building those out as we go. And that is the Teacher Keys Effectiveness System and the components that you see there. The Leader Keys Effectiveness System. You also have the observation and documentation piece. You have, as well, on the right side, you have the governance and leadership, where you have the survey piece where you have classified and certified teachers doing surveys on their administrators. And that is considered as part of information for documentation on the standards. As you see, the arrow moves over, and it is under the observation piece. On the bottom, you do have the student growth and academic achievement, and that is calculated at the school level for student growth percentile measures, which Melissa will talk to you about, achievement gap reduction, and then, of course, our student learning objectives as well. And all that goes up to form a leader effectiveness measure, and I failed to mention on the teacher, you have a teacher effectiveness measure with those scores coming together. Okay, so where are we now? Who's on board this year? We have the original 26 Race to the Top districts, as well as other additional districts that have come on board voluntarily or because they were SIG or priority school. And a SIG or priority school are your lower achieving schools, and they had to come on board and do Teacher Keys and Leader Keys. That was part of their mandated plan. So they are with us as well. We also have 6 study year schools. Thank you. 6 study year schools who are studying with us. They're not ready to go full force into implementation, but they are working toward that. And we also have 18 districts who have indicated an interest in coming on board with us for next year. So at this time, we have 76 entities involved. This just talks about where we are in our goals. Of course, training is so important to us. Our evaluation specialists are out training. They've already trained with TEKS and LEAKS. Right now, they're out in the district doing evaluations with administrators to make sure that they're both seeing the same thing, that they both have inter-rater reliability. We find that's extremely important in this procedure. You cannot be an evaluator unless you're credentialed. So they go through training and they go through testing. We're doing a lot of work with SLO training. That is a big learning curve for us, so we're really focusing on that and also going to the teacher level. We've been at the district level. We're moving to the teacher level to do more training with that. An SLO is a content-specific, grade-level, measurable objective, okay, that is aligned to the standards and that's focused on growth. So that you would have a pre-test, you would have a post-test, it would be aligned to the standards, you would set a growth target, and then you would see how far your students would grow. Okay? Oh, goodness. Well, to be honest with you, you can have a tiered SLO. So if a student came in at a certain level, just like with student growth percentiles, say students came in at this level, you would set a growth target for, you want them to go up 40%. But if they came in at a higher level, you would set that growth target at a different level so that you would always exceed the growth, that even at the high achieving levels, there would be growth for that student. And I don't have an example right in front of me to read. Do you have one?
The point is to have some way to validly measure growth in the individual classroom context.
Would you like to hear this one? Okay. says during 2012-2013, all second grade students will increase their words read correctly, and as measured by Ames Webb. Students will make growth as stated below. Students who score less than or equal to 51 WRC in the fall will increase WRC by 37 to 42. Students who score 43 WRC or higher will exceed their target, so it's tiered. Okay, so that it just shows how that student's going to grow, and it tries to be fair for those students coming in at this point to show that growth. Okay. Okay. And the last piece of this slide, we want to talk about sustainability after Race to the Top funds are gone. We're working very hard on professional development resources that are going to be in the electronic platform, working to train folks in the district to build capacity, and also, of course, working with the SLO and doing that district training I was talking about. What do we expect from this? Well, in a nutshell, we expect to be able to recognize our most effective educators. They deserve that. Also, to make sure teachers and leaders coming out of prep programs are prepared. To make sure teachers and leaders get the professional learning that meets their needs and adds to their effectiveness. And to provide those effective classroom teachers with more leadership opportunities. Some teachers don't want to leave the classroom, but they want those opportunities. And to ensure that teachers found repeatedly ineffective are exited from the profession.
Go to that timeline. That's critical. That last, the dates on here. Now, this is critical because you're going to see, I'm going to ask her to comment on this, you're going to see a piece of legislation that I think Randy Nix is carrying, Representative Nix is carrying from the State Department and the Governor's Office. They're supporting this on the teacher evaluation that will incorporate. Am I correct? So we're looking at the key dates you're going to be hearing, members of this committee, with most of this legislation you're going to be getting to this year is 2014, 15, 2014, 15. You're going to be hearing those dates. That's when everything is triggered. If we do nothing, we fall back to the old. Everything we have now just goes away, all the flexibility we've given. But that's the key date for everything, so that's why. Superintendent, is that about, we're right on target, okay? Let me ask if there's any questions right now. I see some blank looks. Anybody have a question they want to ask now? If you do, raise your hand. Okay. Okay. I see one. Yes, Senator.
How much Race to the Top money have we will we receive over the course of the allocation, and when will it end?
The Race to the Top funding, to my understanding, ends September 2014. The amount, $400 million for the whole grant, but for teacher and leader specifically, we'll get that for you. I don't have that right now.
And it will terminate in 2014. Were there any matching funds needed?
No, I believe it was just the grant, but that's why we're working to sustain what we need to do. Yes.
Okay. I'll take two more questions and we'll move on. All right, number 16.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm still not clear on how you're going to measure growth in untested subjects.
And the tested?
No, untested.
And the non-tested.
Non-tested.
Well, what happens, and I'll explain it to you from an educator standpoint, is these are district-developed, DOE-approved student learning objectives. And so if you have a non-tested teacher, non-tested subjects, you would hope that that district would get those teachers together and they would talk about where their students are and looking at their data. Okay? They would look at their standards, and then what they would do is they would write an SLO statement that would have in it a target of where these students started when they come in based on their assessment and where they need to grow. And it could be tiered for the different levels of students coming in, like student growth percentile does. And so this is a process. We started the first year with 10 SLOs. Each district wrote, and it's been a process that districts have been working together. We actually have over 3,000 SLOs written at this point that cover the 52 main courses that are taught. Now, do we need to build out more? Yes, we do, and we're working toward that as we go to build those SLOs that meet the standards, they're aligned with standards, and they meet our table of specifications. And so we have reviewed them.
Representative Mayo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What component or which Race to the Top program has been very effective? Do we have any evidence about what's working, and maybe recommendations on what we should continue to fund once the money runs out?
Well, I think the teacher and leader evaluation has been, what we have seen, has been very effective because of the feedback that we're getting on our focus groups and our surveys. Because when administrators go into a classroom and they observe and they have a rubric to go by and they have standards and expectations, then that teacher gets that feedback and that teacher can improve their practice, and that's what it's all about. So I think there are probably a lot of wonderful Race to the Top initiatives, but the one that I would have to say, since it's the one I'm involved with, would be teacher and leader.
And I would just echo that. I mean, there is a lot of good work with Race to the Top, but in my opinion, if we want to talk about return on investment and having the impact on student achievement and student learning in this state, this to me has got to be probably the single most important piece, because it's getting at what teachers are doing in the classroom, what leaders are doing in their building, and if we've got the right teachers and the right leaders in the right places, then we have impact.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, that's all the questions. Go ahead.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right. 13, all right.
Can we turn this over?
No, that's all right. Okay.
All right, and as they're flipping through the slides, Melissa Fincher's going to come up and
Let's use your mic there, Superintendent. I got you on. I turned you on.
and hopefully in layman's terms,
Yeah.
explain to you a student growth percentile. It gets fairly complicated. I sit down with her on a regular basis, and we have to go through things, very slowly, because she's a psychometrician. She is a testing person. So in layman's terms, we're going to try to tell you about student growth percentiles and how we're measuring student growth. Okay?
Now, please do that. If you say SLOs, say what we mean by SLOs. If you say rubrics, is that a Rubik's Cube, or is that what? I mean, what?
Yeah, and let me also say that this piece is critical to the teacher and leader evaluation system, but it is also critical to the College and Creative Performance Index, which is our next item on the agenda. So this piece kind of is the bridge between these two. So
I will certainly do my best, and please yell at me if I'm not being clear. I'll go back and try to revise. We've been working for a number of years at looking at different growth models. There certainly are a variety of different models out there. We had a committee that looked at the different models, looked at how our state assessment data played out in those models, and ultimately selected the student growth percentile. This type of model, the student growth percentile, is being used in a number of other states: Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Nevada, Kentucky, Arkansas, Arizona. There are many other states that are using this model as well. And the purpose of the model is to look at how students progress through the curriculum. So we've had the status look at student achievement for quite some time, and what we mean by status is whether or not they met the expectations on the test. So you're all familiar with that through adequate yearly progress, how many students met or exceeded the standard on the CRCT. What we've not been able to do is to look at students that have grown and quantify or describe how they've grown. So with the student growth percentile, it's the over key, thank you. Well, okay, so I'll just go on. So with the student growth percentile, we're describing the progress the student makes relative to his or her academic peers. That is the peer group that has similar scale scores or similar test scores. So these are tested grades and content areas. So for the CRCT, we're talking about reading, English language arts, math, science, and social studies. For the end of course test, we're talking about 8 courses. So we're going to describe student achievement from where they began the prior year on that measure. So if I'm a 5th grade student, we'll look at how I scored in 4th grade on reading. And I will be compared to other students who had the same score as me on that 4th grade reading. The growth will be described in terms of a percentile. Where do I rank within that cohort of similar academic peers? Does that make sense? Okay, and you do have the PowerPoint presentation. Sorry for the technology issue up here. But so again, that's a key concept. Understanding similar academic peers is key to understanding this. So it doesn't, low achieving students are compared to other low achieving students. Average achieving students are compared to other average achieving students. High achieving students are compared to others like them. That is key. We look at how they progress through the curriculum. We're in business now. And then we describe how they progress in terms of percentiles. We calculate the percentiles at the individual student level, but then we can look at how groups are performing. So we could look at how a classroom is performing, how a school is performing, a district, and then of course the state. So this is new information. Again, each student receives a growth percentile based on how he or she progressed in comparison to his or her academic peers. Percentiles, I believe you are familiar with. When we take our kids to the doctor, there's growth charts, and certain, if a 6-month checkup, they'll tell us what percentile our student is, or our baby is in terms of weight or height. They range from 1 to 99. 50 is the median. That means 50% of the group is above, 50% is below. And obviously higher percentiles means more growth compared to academic peers. Lower percentiles mean lower growth. We can also give student projections and targets. So for a student who has not met standard, we can tell what level they need to grow at in order to become proficient on the next assessment. So we can look at information and give that target, give that feedback to the teacher, to the student, and to the school. So in terms of reporting SCPs, do I need to stop?
Well, I'm kind of gauging some perplexed looks.
Anytime you have a question, hit your button, and I'll, yeah.
What I think might be helpful
Yeah.
is one of the questions that people have a lot of times on measuring teachers based on
Yeah.
growth is that children come in at different levels. And what if you have a child that comes in to your classroom, let's say you're in a 3rd grade teacher, or let's say a 4th grade teacher, and the child is coming in reading at a 1st grade level. Well, this child is not going to meet the standard of reading on a 5th grade level by the end of the 4th grade in many cases. What the student growth percentile does is take the child where he is when he enters the classroom and measures the growth that a teacher is able to attain by the end of the semester. And you give credit basically to that teacher of moving that child from where he was when he entered, regardless of where that point was, towards the target of meeting that grade level standard. Does that help?
Yeah. Let's take these. I have Senator Tibbins and Senator Miller. So, Senator Tibbins.
Thank you for that description, because I think that's what our testing ought to be. I guess my question is, why do we separate the students into cohorts? Why don't we use an overall achievement standard as to the level of progression or level of mastery from 1st grade, 1st month, to 12th grade, 9th month, and know where they fall on that spectrum? It kind of bothers me when we separate kids into, I mean, I realize, not all of them are going to be in the same spectrum, and it makes a lot of sense. I think we, in Cobb County, piloted a program where we closed that gap of the range that teachers dealt with. All that being said, I don't want us to lower the expectation of students because they fall into a lower cohort, and so we said because they're in a lower cohort, we don't have as much expectation for them. I'd rather have an overall standard. I mean, my question, I guess, boils down to this. Does the state have, or are we absolutely moving toward an annual evaluation so we'll know a student's academic progress when they finish, say, whatever grade it is, and have another one the next year? I've never seen a testing mechanism other than ITBS, if you gave it every year, where you had a reliable benchmark where you could tell what net gain scores for each student each year was. Now, it was not perfect, but I think it was far superior to take a little bit from here, a little bit from there. In Cobb, we tested grades 1 through 8 annually, and we had a benchmark. We could look back at those students and tell what they did on each year, and it was a tremendously helpful evaluation tool because you knew what was going on in the classroom, you knew what was going on in the individual students, you knew what was going on in the school, and it was a tremendous management tool. You know, do we have that, and will this provide that data on to a nationally normed standard?
Not necessarily to a nationally normed standard, because this is based on Georgia's assessments. So Georgia's assessments are based on our curriculum standards. Now, we are moving in that direction with the common assessments. Georgia is part of the PARC consortium, the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers. And so in 14-15, we will have a common assessment administered in about 25 states. And so we'll be able to get that national perspective. What we do have in the state of Georgia is the CRCT and our end of course test, which set grade level expectations. And this growth model then works in concert with that to say how the students are progressing from grade. So you have similar information to what you're getting with the ITBS through this growth model.
I don't mean to be argumentative, but I guess I'm tired of Georgia being rated way down at the bottom, and I want us to get to a standard where we're on a nationally normed test, and if our delivery model is not where we're competing with the rest of the United States, we need to have an indicator of that so we know exactly what we need to do and can move there as expeditiously as we can. And you know, I guess that's my overall comment about testing. If it does not bring you back to a national comparison, I don't believe it meets the mark of what we need for a management tool in education.
And we're working on that.
Senator Miller?
I think Senator Tippin's question is basically, I think that's where we're going in the next few years with Common Core.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to have your national standards. What you're looking for, that's going to be the national standard, is because the Common Core on math and reading and that stuff, we're going to have national standards to look at how we look at the rest of the country. Right now we're using Georgia standards. Till we go to the Common Core, that's not going to happen. But my question is this: after all of this and the student growth model, and you want to see the child went from here to there, what is the definition of what is acceptable growth? Because you're going to be using this to evaluate teachers. So I want to know, what criteria are you using, the Department of Education, to decide that this is an acceptable growth pattern, no matter where the child is, if he's at this level or this level,
Correct.
et cetera? Who determines what is considered acceptable? Because you're going to be using this to evaluate teachers down the road.
Correct.
I believe you said the growth is 50%, if I remember right. So what's determined that it's an acceptable growth percentage?
We would expect teachers to have the majority of their students at the 50th percentile or higher in terms of average growth. So students growing at the 50th percentile, meaning more than half of their academically similar peers or higher. Now, another thing we'll be able to do is we'll be able to
back up a minute. What if that number is real low? What if that's not an acceptable level of growth?
Then we will adjust. Then we will adjust.
Are you using any statistical basis or
Yes,
is there a national basis to come up with what is considered acceptable?
Yes,
That's
and that is
asking.
what we're using, yes.
So it'll be from a statistical base that you're using?
Yes.
Okay.
Not arbitrary, not capricious, but from
And bear with me, one more question. The reason I asked that question, because when we talked about ranking schools, systems, and we might have 25 or 30 A's and B's and the rest are C's, D's, and F's, because I'd heard that the department was actually thinking about curving that, and to me that defeats the whole purpose. We need to be honest with ourselves.
So this is not a curving. This is just comparing students to their academic similar peers.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're looking at the median, and the median would be, when we talk about group scores, group percentiles, the median would be the point where 50% of the students grew at a rate higher than that point, and 50% grew less than. Let me show you some pictures.
Let's take this one more question. Representative Cassidy, you had a question?
Just real quick, Mr. Chairman, and just piggybacking a little bit of what Senator Tippins just said, I also have the concern with the testing. And so are we using a different criteria when we compare the CRCT with the end of course testing? Are we using a different scale? Is it a whole different system? Or is it something that we can track a student in their performance from third grade moving up all the way through high school? How is that working?
Yes. we can look at how, because all students in the state of Georgia transition from 8th grade CRCT to the end of course test. Typically it's 9th grade lit, and now it's coordinate algebra and mathematics. It might be physical science or biology and science, and then U.S. history. And we can look at how students are progressing. Yes.
Okay.
And we can look at how students are progressing. So yes, so even though the tests are reported on slightly different scales, we can look at that. We can take those different scales into consideration and look at how students progress across those two testing programs. So this is the visualization tool for the student growth percentile, and this is hopefully a picture is worth 1,000 words, and maybe this will make it a little clearer. I don't know whether it's showing up on the screen or not, but you certainly have it in your packet. But this is a fictional school district. The circles are different schools. You can see that we have different quadrants. We can have high-achieving students who are making low growth. We can have high-achieving students who are making high growth. We can have lower-achieving students who are making high growth. And then we can have low-achieving students who are making low growth. So each circle here is a school. The size of the circle is an indicator of the size of the school. The smaller the circle, the fewer students in that school. If we go in and we look at a single school, this is Eagle Academy, you can see that this particular school had 97% of their students meeting or exceeding on the CRCT in reading. The median growth percentile was at 50. So 50% of their students grew higher than a 50th percentile, and 50 grew lower than. If we want to drill down past the school, we can go into grade. So this is grade 5 results for reading. Here we have in 5th grade, 99% of the students met expectations on the CRCT in reading, but the median growth percentile was 46. So while we have high-achieving students, they're meeting expectations, they're not growing as much. If we go if we go down to the next, if we want to drill into the different class sections for 5th grade reading, here's the class section where 100% of the students met or exceeded the standard for reading, but the growth for that group of students was at the 29th percentile. So again, we have high-achieving students who are not making growth. So this growth model captures that. It captures high-achieving students who are making high growth. It captures high-achieving students who are not making much growth. So we have a different level of information that we can act on. Likewise, if we have low-achieving students who have not met standard, heretofore we have not been able to give the schools, give the teachers credit for the progress that they made with those students. We now will be able to give them credit. So even if I'm a student, I did not meet last year, I don't meet again this year, that doesn't mean that I haven't grown academically as Dr. Barge described. This will be captured in this growth model and quantified, and my teacher, my school can get credit for the movement that they've made. Here at the next slide, you get at the different, this is the same class where the median growth was 29. This is the class, and you can see that we have several students between meets and exceeds, so they're falling in the meets category, but their growth is very low. So it goes down to the student level, and the teacher can look and say, okay, well, they met standard, but they didn't grow very much. What do I need to do to improve that?
And that's important because over time, if that growth does not pick up, then they will find themselves not meeting standards.
That is correct.
In future grades.
That is correct.
Okay. I want to be sure now, as you know, of course, there's a lot of the technical information, but I want to be sure that we know where you're going with the evaluation. Now, this will be this piece of legislation that is coming out, right? Will be encompassing this. Is that correct, Superintendent?
When you are looking at the teacher and leader evaluation system, the student growth percentiles are what's used in that 50% of that teacher's effectiveness measure. Is the growth that students make in the classroom.
All right, but all right, I want to be sure you leave enough time now for the report card too. So I'll let you gauge your time.
We got 3 o'clock.
Well, I am done unless you have other questions about the growth model. But it plays a major role in the effectiveness measures as well as in the index. I believe.
Any other questions?
I have none here, so we're ready.
Okay. All right. Well, we will move on to the College and Career Ready Performance Index and our waiver from No Child Left Behind, our new accountability system. We are really excited. Martha Rycraft is going to give you kind of a report of where we are. We might not need to spend as much time on the historical perspective, so we can get into. I think what the committee will be interested in is how we're determining these scores.
That's what we want to know.
And how the report cards will look to parents.
Okay.
And over time, this has continued. We have made tweaks here and there because we've listened to feedback from various stakeholders, including some of you guys. But we believe this is now at the point where it's ready to go. So, Martha, if you will go over that with them.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Barge. And Representative Coleman and others in the room today, many of you have given us much input as we have worked over a period of really, over a period of years, really thinking about the need for an improved accountability, roadmap for school improvement, and communication system for our state to create a single statewide accountability system. Representative Coleman, at our last session, you mentioned how is this thing really going to be helping schools? And I want us to really dwell on that some as we look at it, because that is the entire purpose, is that as we create an accountability system, we also create a mechanism for our leaders to really define what they need to do to move their schools forward. And I did give you some background information on that as you look at the PowerPoint slides that you have. I do want to take you, if you will, and if you can start at the beginning with me and get to the slide where you see the bar. I don't see that we've got our PowerPoint moving on that.
Just tell us which one you're using.
Yes, sir. Take a look at the bar where you have the printout of how the overall score will be displayed.
The major package, right?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
You have...
Is that numbered?
You have Central School District, you have George Washington High School as your example.
Yeah.
Has everyone found the right thing? I'm so apologetic that we don't have this technology to help you here. Okay, giving everybody just a minute to find that. All right, I wanted you to see how an actual scorecard will look for every school in our state. We are talking about elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. We are talking about non-standard schools. We are talking about alternative schools. We are talking about every education institution in the public education system in our state, in all our districts. You will see that we see the three major components. You have an achievement score, which is made up, and I will show you the indicators just a moment. All indicators comprise the achievement score. You have a progress score, and again, I'll show you the definition where that is defined literally by the student growth percentiles that Melissa Fincher just described to you that are also used in our teacher evaluation system. And you have an achievement gap that really does compare how students are performing at the lowest quartile in that school compared to the state performance levels. We have challenge points. This last time that I was here with you and with Representative Coleman in the subcommittee, you had heard from a couple of superintendents. We have been hearing from superintendents statewide. When we have very challenging demographic groups, particularly SWD, ED, and EL students, those are your students with disabilities, your second language students, and your students your students with disabilities, your second language students, and your economically disadvantaged students. The three most challenging demographic groups in our state, also the three that we are measured at a federal level for federal accountability. Our superintendents have told us over and over, when we have high percentages of these numbers in our schools, our road to absolutely exemplary performance is a tougher one. So we wanted to acknowledge that, and our Chairman Coleman, you mentioned that in the beginning of this session, that you've heard that from our superintendents, as we have also.
we wanted to give some deference to that. Not only do we have that represented in the progress and achievement gap in this configuration, but we have it represented in what we call challenge points. And I'll show you how that works in just a moment. We also have an opportunity for innovation and good exemplification of best practices to give us extra points on the index. And then I'll come to the 2-star ratings here in a moment. We wanted to also acknowledge the fact that how a school spends money, how a district spends money, is important to the success factors going on in the school. Equally important is this whole issue of school climate, where soft skills, Representative Nixon, all the important ways that leaders set up how a building climate sustains and nurtures excellence in a school. Extremely important, so we want to give some star ratings there. Again, not configuring into what a score is going to be, but important to a report of this nature. So if you will, I'll kind of explain to you now how the numbers would look. Go to the next slide, if you will, that's called CCRPI points.
I hate to do it, but Margaret,
that's all right.
I have a question about before we're going on.
No, that's fine.
All right, Representative Kaiser.
I may be ahead of myself.
Yes, ma'am.
On the CCRPI points and weighting page, I know you're getting to that.
Yes.
Is there going to be a breakdown of those challenge points within that?
Yes,
you're going to tell us that?
I'm going to tell you about those in just a moment here, but yes, we will. In essence, I'll go ahead and answer you now. What we will be doing is looking at that school score on the ED, SWD, and EL subgroup points, and we are going to have a maximum of 10 points. So we do not have it in place.
Say what that is.
I'm sorry, I said it before, but it's economically disadvantaged.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, these are the 3 subgroups, Chairman Coleman, that really are challenging many of our schools.
Okay.
So, yes, sir. Representative Tippins?
Disadvantaged children by free and reduced lunches.
Yes, sir, by free and reduced lunch.
Do y'all ever bring back into that an evaluation of true percentage of turnover or transiency in the school as a factor?
Certainly.
I know that's a factor in that, but it's also, it can be very different in the way it operates whether you have turnover or not.
Certainly it is, and you're talking about mobility rates and that sort of thing in schools. Transiency,
kids in and out
yes,
of the school
as
during the
children
year.
come in and out. Right now, that is not a part of ED, EL, or SWD in the numbers that we're talking about here, but that is a part of our reporting structures at the state level. But I think you bring a good point to the table. What we were trying to do is look at what our superintendents told us over and over and over, and how we have watched the data. And certainly mobility rates do play a role in the challenge that our superintendents and principals face. But that is not a part of this. This is pure free and reduced lunch. Students have IEPs, which are in the SWD category, and students who are second language defined students.
And one thing that I just had somebody punch me. The ED means education disadvantage.
Yes, sir.
EL means English language speakers of other
learners.
languages.
Yes, sir.
And your SWD means students with disabilities, special ed.
Yes,
right.
sir. That's your special ed.
Well, you'll know that. Yeah.
So going
the
to
first
the
one was economically
economic disadvantage. Yeah.
I'm sorry,
What'd
is
I
that
say?
not what he
What'd I
said?
say? Education disadvantage. Well, we're all
Make sure we're
education.
clear on that.
That's good. Economically disadvantaged. Good.
Someone pointed out, too, that you might want to know what an IEP is. An
Yeah.
IEP is an individual education plan, and that's what our SWD students with disabilities all have under that defined disability category. So again, if I throw out any of those, I'll try to catch myself and bring them back to you. So looking at the CCRPI points and weighting, just again showing you that we as a state have valued achievement. We have valued the achievement of our kids. You're going to see across 13 indicators at the elementary and middle level and 19 indicators at the high school level. So again, 70%, 70 points of this index is going to be in the achievement category, 15% in progress, and 15% in the gap closure. If you will now move to the indicators themselves and let us take a look just for a moment, and you will see what we are going to be judging our schools by.
Martha, before you hit that, I just want to address Senator Miller, one of your questions earlier. So in an effort for full transparency, because we had heard the same rumors that folks thought that these were being curved. On this particular slide, you will see that the maximum points that a school can earn is 100 points. So the percentile grade, whether it's 80%, 90%, is going to be based fully on 100 points. So if they're receiving a letter grade, a numerical grade of 89, they earned 89 points. There is no curving anywhere.
No. But the same thing will happen when you transfer this to letter grade.
Well, we are not transferring.
We're not planning on doing
to
that.
letter grades. So. Right.
They're going to do A, B, C, D, F, right?
We were told in a meeting, in our TAC meeting this morning, and I'm not sure is Bonnie here, but she stated that had not been decided yet. Bonnie,
We do not plan to have, well, you know now, we do not plan to include the letter grades in the bill. But, we've ended up using, is that correct, Superintendent?
We did that last year in a bill.
We took it out, too, in the House.
No, we didn't. We passed it.
Yes, we did. We took it out in the House. Y'all left it.
They're nodding back there, Mr. Chairman.
But it was taken out in the House. If you look at the law, I've already looked it up. It's out. It's out. We took it out.
That's why they call y'all Frick and Frack.
Frick and Frack. Frack's not knowing what Frick did.
Okay. I didn't mean to get us off track there, okay?
Let's get back to order, excuse me, because we need to move. All right, come on back.
All right, yes, and I just wanted you all to know that I think a slide that is very helpful for you is the CCRPI point components. That defines each of these for you, and I think that will be very helpful. It will give you the definition of achievement, of progress, of gap, of the challenge points, and of the financial efficiency and the school climate. And please do let us reiterate one more time. This is built on a pure 100% scale. There is absolutely no scaling within it. The only, again, advantage that you have over the pure percentage points accrued through the achievement, the progress, and the gap are the challenge points. And we're hopefully answering a call there that we think is very valuable, and that is the challenge of again, the subgroups that do create those special challenges in our school. We also wanted to reward schools for being very innovative, and that's where that exceeding the bar category that we've all mentioned to you a couple of different times, where again, schools have an opportunity to be creative, get out of the box. We just recently, for example, added an exceeding the bar indicator that was a reaction to much conversation about the need to personalize these environments and pay attention to individual kids so that children simply do not fall through the cracks in a school. So we added an indicator on exceeding the bar there. The potential for that indicator alone is enormous in terms of improving the climates in our school. I believe if you would take a look at the 3 different levels, the high school, middle school, and elementary, you will see a broad array of expectation. Again, achievement battery on this CCRPI includes all of these indicators. Just to give you a quick idea, they are all separated. Let's take a look at the high school one, if you will, for me just a moment, because I think it is the most comprehensive and gives you an opportunity to see the 3 categories. The content mastery being the first component. These are our state assessments. By the way, the comments made today about normed, Representative Tippins, I believe you talked about the normed assessment. When we move to any kind of a common assessment for Common Core, these would be replaced by the appropriate Common Core assessments. So every chance we have to compare ourselves nationally, we certainly want to take advantage of that. We will not, and as you know, Common Core assessment right now is built around reading, English language arts, and mathematics only. We have next generation science standards that are coming on. We do not expect an assessment for them anytime soon. So again, we will need our EOCTs in the science and social studies realm to continue. And then our post-high school readiness category, this is where we are measuring certainly all of our career readiness activity. We are measuring students who can enter a college, whether it be a baccalaureate institution or a technical institution, ready to take credit-bearing coursework. Here is where we measure our SAT and ACT. We have never had the SAT and ACT on an accountability system in Georgia before. It is now a part of the College and Career Ready Performance Index. We want to continue to encourage our schools to work for more children at the exceeding level. You will see that reflected in all 3 levels of the index. And I could go on. Certainly graduation rate, Chairman Coleman, we have both.
Tell us this. Tell us this. We see all of this. What I'm after, we see all of this. We're looking at flexibility and accountability. We're going to say that a school that makes the grade 80 to 90, they're going to turn to loose. They're going to have complete flexibility.
Yes,
no rules, no regulations. They're going to just have to follow the law, but they're going to be accountable. But they're going to have to do this. The report card they're going to get, it's going to include all these.
Yes, sir.
Ideas, but are you telling me that we're ready right now to grade a school? We have everything ready so we can grade any high school now. We can grade elementary, middle, and high schools, and they can receive a grade by 2014 or 15. They'll be ready. They'll get
in March of this year.
In March of this year,
next month.
Because by race to the top, it has to be ready, right?
It doesn't have anything to do with the race stop. It has to do with our waiver from No Child.
Well, a waiver, that's right, it's the waiver. But we will have that ready, so
Yes.
superintendent, every school will get a grade,
Yes.
number grade.
And that's what this page
That's
right
what
here
that
is
is.
what the report card will look like.
That's what I
This will
want.
be the facing page of the
I want
report
everybody to
card.
see that. Now, this is important. Y'all see that.
So what you've got in that green bar, right under that green bar on that page, is the overall score or the numerical grade for that school.
And every school within a system will get
Yes.
that.
Yes.
And what I want this committee to see, what we're talking about in the legislation, if a school gets an 80 to 100, they are free with flexibility and accountability, free. If they get a 79 down, they will be allowed other options. They will not get the complete flexibility. Now, they could get the flexibility or charter system. They could get either one. The 80 to 100 could get a charter system or flexibility. The 79 under would get charter system, or they would be under state control completely. Is that correct? Is that the way we're looking?
I haven't seen.
But that's what we talked about. Is that correct? That's what we talked about. Yes, sir. You know that's what we talked about. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. I'm not going to use grade. Well, it could be if it's curved.
Also,
yes, that's a good point. Is that correct?
We're not just going to rank schools, we are ranking the entire systems.
A district effectiveness measure is in the works, but it won't be ready for March.
But March, our goal is that of our 180 systems, we're going to be ranking our systems.
Yes, ranking our systems. 80 or above.
Whatever. Yeah, okay.
Individual schools will be combined to get an average. Is that not right?
That's exactly right, sir.
Mm-hmm.
They
But
will
I just want
tally
the
up.
board. I want the committee to see how you use it. That's the purpose. I want to see how they're using this report card.
Yes,
That's because that's going to be a key component next week. All right. Any other questions from the committee? All right, 28. Who's 28? Down. Somebody had their. I didn't have 23. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Reichrath and also Representative Dudgeon and for your work on this report card. And I know, Chairman Dixon, you probably had your hand in it with the superintendents. But you do value the achievement of students. You also value the achievement of teachers. But most of all, it's important to me that you value growth, because I never want a child who is not an achieving child to go into a classroom and to have a teacher say, oh no, I have that child. And it's so important to me that every child be greeted and be taught where they are and grow. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Representative Clark, I do want you to know, as I said at the beginning of this presentation, every one of these indicators has an opportunity for us to share effective practices that are going on across the state. It gives us an opportunity to say on specific indicators, the DOE can be your support system, but certainly other schools in this state can provide those effective practices, those best practices to help you grow in that indicator. So every one of them is a study in strategic planning.
Okay. Any other questions? Now, now's your time. Yes, Representative Kaiser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have had this ongoing question. Hopefully you can answer. when you're talking about combining the schools within a district for that grade, what happens when you have middle to high performing schools and you have several very low performing schools? How do they not sort of get left out, and doesn't that skew the average for that grade, district grade?
Representative Kaiser, we're looking at that right now, and you know, a lot of issues have come up. For example, the issue of alternative environments, where you literally have children who are coming to you in various levels of real need. So we want to be fair to our districts as those tallies are made. So again, those measures are sort of our last step in our process. Right now we are literally working on the school scores and how they will, again, tally up, and we realize that that will be an important configuration in your legislation. But we do want to exercise that fairness, because you're right. You could really have a school system make decisions based on how that tally was done, and we don't want to hurt our children and the chances that they have, particularly in an alternative environment.
All right. 22, Representative Dudgeons.
Thank you again, Martha, for the presentation today, and Dr. Barge. Y'all know I'm a math guy and a statistics guy, and I've tried to help provide my at least small input to this system.
And we appreciate you so much.
And I wanted to add my endorsement that I believe that it started at a good place and has gone to an even better place with what y'all are trying to do. And it probably is one of the most comprehensive scorecards in the country, if I'm not correct, Dr. Barge. And it is vastly based on absolute standards of achievement. I think that's very important to Senator Miller's point, is that the vast majority of this index is absolute achievement, saying we expect every child to do well, but at the same time acknowledges the reality that we do have kids starting into place that's very challenging. And as Valerie said very passionately, you don't want to have those kids be just cast aside by the teacher because there's no way they can get to the absolute standard. And that's so important to superintendents. I want to echo a point of one of our rural superintendents said to me that if they've got a school with a challenging population and they're working really hard, they want to make sure that they're not slapped with a too terribly bad grade with no attaboys on it that show that they're actually making progress, a difficult thing. But at the same time, we're staying with a very high absolute bar. So it's a tough balance. I think we've done a really good job, and I think we've rounded into good shape. And I wanted to thank you all.
A lot of work on it, yes. All right, 19.
Just two questions, if you don't mind. You spoke to this earlier a little bit, but just this, I think it's important that we have consistency in the evaluation process from one school to the other.
Yes, sir.
There's some things that, of course, are absolute. The test scores, those are pretty easy to calculate. There's other things on your sheet that's a little bit more subjective. Can you tell me again the training that will be required for the evaluators to go through, and who will actually do the evaluation of the teachers?
Yes, sir. Well, if you're talking about teacher evaluation, are you referencing teacher evaluation or the actual scorecard that we're talking about right now?
Well, the teacher evaluation that I guess will eventually roll into this whole process, but just curious.
Yeah.
And then my second question, which maybe goes along with that, and you can answer it at the same time, that one of the things that I hear from a lot of the superintendents that I talk with in my area is they have teachers who they know are not performing. And it sounds like, and I agree with what the Representative Dudgeon says, it sounds like you've done, and he's done, and other folks have done an excellent job trying to address a lot of the concerns that I've heard over the last several years with low-performing schools, high problem population areas. But one of the things that I constantly hear from folks, parents, teachers, and administrators, is we have these teachers who we know are not performing, but we continue to have to keep them on payroll. And I heard Dr. Bard say that there would be a process to exit them from the system. I'm just curious, what is that process, and how long does it take to, if I've got an underperforming teacher in a school system, and I can think of a few, I won't name them, but that need to be moved out of the system, how long of a process does that take, and how many years will it take for students to have to be put through that effort? So.
Well, first of all, I will answer your question. The department does the credentialing for the evaluators. So they actually go through testing. They watch videos to make sure that they have inter-rater reliability when they score teachers. So we do that, and they have to pass that test in order to be evaluators.
Where would they come from? There are teachers from other schools, or who are the evaluators?
Well, these would be the administrators. You know, for leader keys, it would be your district office personnel. For teacher keys, it would be your principals, your assistant principals, or they may ask a department chair, those key leaders, or central office person to come in, but they would all have to be credentialed before they would be allowed to evaluate. Your other question, as we work toward putting teacher keys and leader keys in, we have a 4-step rubric. And the difference between the system we have now, which is really satisfactory, unsatisfactory, is that you're going to delineate where that teacher falls on that rubric based on those standards. And so you're going to get a whole lot more information. And you're also going to have those growth measures come in to add that measurement, that 50%, along with the observation. You're going to put that together, and you're going to get a lot more information about where that teacher falls. So that's what we're expecting to see as we move along, an ability to know if a teacher is effective or ineffective, and if they need to be moved on out of the profession.
Well, you know, one of the problems, and having managed local government for 23 years, is getting administrators to do a good job with evaluations has always been a challenge for me. And I was talking to a superintendent a few weeks ago about a specific teacher, and he said, I know that's a problem, but I can't, my principal always gives them a better evaluation than what they really deserve. So that's why I was asking about the training. If the administrators and the offices are not holding their teachers accountable, then it seems like it would be difficult for this to work. So that was my reason for the question.
And that's why we're working with inter-rater reliability to make sure they're on target.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also understand too that you're looking at that student growth percentile too. So the teacher's effectiveness score is only going to be based 50% on what that principal says. The other 50% is going to be on what the student is achieving in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's a different component we haven't had before. Yes, Kristen, Governor's office, we have Kristen with us back there in the back. On this, the comment was made about the teacher evaluation component with race to the top, and Superintendent, you may want to comment on that. You may not have been involved, but this whole thing with evaluation, pay for performance, where is that component? I just had a question. Somebody, that whole thing about pay for performance and all of that. Well, where's that?
I will tell
you. Do you want to address it?
Well, in our race to the top, Deputy Superintendent is not here with us today, but I will tell you that we have 2 of our 26 districts who have been received race to the top grant money this particular year to pilot some pay-for-performance models in their district. Okay. So at this particular point...
But that's not going to affect any of this report card right now? No. Nothing? Okay.
No, well, and Kristen, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Okay. All right, I've got 2 more questions. I want to take these questions, all right? Everybody's been patient. Number 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is actually piggybacking off of the question he asked a few minutes ago in regards to what do we do with bad teachers? How do we get them weeded out of the system? How do you get around tenure? If this is supposed to take effect in 14, 15, how do you get around tenure, and how do you get around collective bargaining? Are these teachers going to be grandfathered, and it takes the next 5 to 10 years to get them out of the system? Can you help me understand that?
Well, we don't have unions in Georgia, so there is no collective bargaining when it comes to teachers. And I've been a high school principal. You've always been able to dismiss a tenured teacher. You just have to have the documentation to support your decision and be willing to go through the steps of a fair dismissal hearing and all of that if the teacher requests it. So our problem, and what this evaluation system really will solve, is that up until now, what we have been using really hasn't been very strong in measuring the full work of what the teachers do. This is going to be a much better instrument to support a personnel decision, especially when you're looking at student growth being included and whether or not a student is achieving in the classroom. Those are data and facts that are difficult to be argued.
You know, if I could add too, sir, we've never held teachers accountable, or schools rather, accountable for this broad array of indicators. Every one of these indicators comes back to the performance of a teacher in a classroom. Every single one of them. So we're going to have far more data. Every one of these indicators is going to be able to be disaggregated down to every level. So a principal is going to have much more information than ever before to base some sort of a development program for a teacher upon, for that true analysis of a teacher is performing in a classroom. And I think our teachers are going to welcome that. They see, you know, the broad array of expectation, and quite honestly, they want someone to talk about all the work they are doing in a classroom. Those who may be falling short, it's going to be a shining light.
The board's lining up. I'm going to tell you, we got a lot. We got to do some other things. And let me say this, people. We're going to bring them back as we get into these pieces of legislation. Let me tell you this. When we discuss this legislation, they will be here, every one of them, answering these questions as we go through them. But I want to quickly get your question. Everybody has one question because we've got 3 or 4 other things to do with this group yet. All right, 16, 13, 9, 11, and 29. Here we go, 16.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So much is relying on the reliability of the test scoring and the evaluations. Will there be any way to avoid the problem with self-evaluation when it comes to making sure these are reliable numbers?
I can assure you that everything we do in our student record, where these numbers will come from, many of them, our data comes from our districts. So we do have to rely on their correctness, on their diligence, on their correct reporting in order to do that. We had our technical advisory committee today for this College and Career Ready Performance Index. We talked at length about that. So again, the reliability and validity measures as to how we have defined a data set are there.
Are all
now
systems
our
in
districts
our
have got
all 180 systems in our system now? Are all 180 systems in our data system?
Certainly.
Are they all?
As far as the longitudinal data system?
Yeah.
The
SDLDS. I think there were 1 or 2 Metro Atlanta districts that
refused?
No, not refused. We were still working with them because they were so large they had developed their own
that's
systems.
important. Yeah, that's critical.
We had to work with them individually on code to get the 2 systems. So if they're not there, we're still in the process of working with them on that.
All right, 13. Let's take these. I've got so much. All right, 13. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've been talking a lot about teacher accountability and so forth. Is anything being done with the university system so that the students that come out of those colleges are better prepared to go into the classroom?
Avis can certainly come up, and while she's coming, I will tell you that we don't do much of anything without our university system. They are a part of every bit of the work you've heard about today, and I'll let Avis.
Yes, we actually have 7 colleges of higher ed working with us to pilot TAPS, the observation piece. We are also ratcheting up our conversation with our university partners to make sure that they will include the teacher keys, leader keys in the preparation programs.
All right, thank you.
Representative, if I can add to
Good
that,
question.
another part of one of the projects of Race to the Top and how we use the longitudinal data is that we will be able to take aggregate data on a district's, let's just say a particular college of education. Those colleges of education will get aggregate reports back on the effectiveness measures of their teachers that we're working with. So we will be able to tie back, not right now, we're not there, but the end game is that you will be able to tie teacher effectiveness back to the colleges of education that prepared them.
Okay, good.
And then we are also working, we have discussed with the CCSSO, the Council of Chief State School Officers, who is beginning, they've just released a research paper on teacher preparation programs, and they've identified 8 to 10 particular things that need to happen in states or in colleges of education that are preparing our teachers to change teacher preparation and entry into the workforce. And we're doing a lot of those. The Georgia Professional Standards Commission is doing a lot of that work. And we, as an Alliance of Education Agency heads, our office, the University System of Georgia, the Georgia Professional Standards Commission, have all committed to work on those particular things to change the face of what we're doing in our colleges of education to prepare a higher quality teacher.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. All right, let's take a 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I feel like I have to hurry up and say this really, really fast. First, I want to say thank you, particularly to the 26 districts that are piloting Race to the Top. This is a behemoth task, and I know that we've had our challenges and got off to a slow start, but as much as I've talked to the folks at DOE and the Office of Student Achievement, you all are doing an incredible job, and particularly on the local level where the districts are doing the work. So thank you for that, and I'm proud that we're moving in this direction. It's bold and it's hard, but it's going to, at the end of the day, make sure our students are achieving. My question is about Common Core. I spent the summer with GCTM, the math teachers group, and we went around the state training math teachers, and I thought the training was superb. I didn't get that same feeling that that was happening with ELA and some of the other subjects in Common Core, and in fact, some of the feedback that I've gotten from teachers in a handful of districts is that the training has not been that effective. And so if you could please speak to what training looks like for Common Core and how we're making sure as we pile on yet another thing for teachers to do, good, but how can we be assured that they're being trained properly to roll this out?
Do you want me to take it? Yeah. Thank you, Representative Morgan.
Give us your Reader's Digest version.
I'll try. I'll try.
No, try. Do it.
You just put such stress
no,
on us.
I'm moving you. We got a lot to do.
We have done some real evaluation and some real assessment of what our teachers were telling us about the ELA implementation. It is a much less tangible type of movement from the place we were with GPS to where we want to get with the Common Core infusion. And I will tell you, I don't think we had it quite right in the beginning. I think it has vastly improved. That is certainly the feedback that Dr. Barge and I are getting. Quite honestly, part of the critique came not so much from the training, but from the resources that we had posted to give them the help that they needed to be able to implement. And I can tell you we have a whole new team down at the DOE working on that as we speak. And I think I'd love to hear back from you to see if that feedback is getting improved.
Yeah, if you will, get with the leadership. Let's get on it.
And you're right. And in the beginning, there were there was feedback that we were getting on the training, and there were some personnel changes that were made with that particular issue. And I think from that particular point, the feedback that we were getting is that the training was improving. Then we got into some issue with resources that we've been working on. So I think we're much better than where we were.
Senator Miller?
I would like to echo Alicia's comment or Representative Morgan's comments. John, I think between the longitudinal data, this College and Career Index, you all have made a lot of progress here in the last 2 years, you and your staff, and you really do deserve to be commended. And I would be remiss because DeKalb County needs some good press. Martha Reichrath is from DeKalb County.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Thank
All right.
you. I needed to get out of there, huh?
Senator Sims?
That's what you said, Fran Miller. No.
Senator Sims?
Just quickly, I don't know what 7 colleges of education, higher ed, you guys are working with, that you kind of carved out to work with the teacher preparation programs. But every teacher, every education program in the state of Georgia needs to be included in whatever is going on because, you know, we want quality education for all Georgians, and you're not going to get it until you have quality teachers in the classroom along with quality administrators. You cannot forget that either. So that's just my...
Amen on the administrators. I agree with you.
I will assure you that in our conversations in the Alliance of Agency Heads that we have the commitment from the Chancellor for all of their colleges of educations to be working with us on teacher induction programs.
And he said that the other day, which I appreciate in the budget. Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Martha, you remember 10 years ago when we went together with the Senate Majority Leader to England and studied their information system. This has been coming a long time in Georgia.
Absolutely.
You also, I recall when the Joint Committee went to Gainesville about 8 years ago, and I recall that the parents had data in the systems, both overseas and in Gainesville, by teacher, by grade, by school, and comparative data across the system and statewide. Will this system give access to parents at that level?
Dr. Barge?
Well, I think you might be referencing more longitudinal data system than this report card.
Yes, the longitudinal. It regards the longitudinal data system. Will the parents have that access?
Yes, there will be a parent portal that parents will have into the longitudinal data system. What I don't know that I can answer for you in the affirmative right now is that they would have access to all teacher information as much as they would have access to the teachers who teach their children. So that I would need to clarify, because I don't know the answer to that.
I'd like to encourage them for you to develop it to a degree, and it's pretty widely done throughout the world, that they have it by teacher throughout the system.
That model was fantastic. We saw in Gainesville.
Yeah, we saw in Gainesville. It was very helpful.
They could pick their teachers. They saw what they were doing. They knew what was going on.
And it was handled in a positive
Very
way,
positive.
and there was a lot of buy-in by the staff as well.
Okay. Well, let's just have some additional conversation about and then we'll.
And I also recall, Martha, that they when we were overseas, that they evaluated teacher education programs. They select the 7 that we have in Georgia, and an individual parent or otherwise could look at how the different schools of education, how their aggregate, not by name, but as an aggregate, how their teachers performed across the state. That would be very helpful to have that information.
Optimal transparency.
All right, we have 3 more, and no one else flick your bit, because it ain't going to be lit. All right, 25. Who's 25?
I am.
Okay, yes.
Dr. Rycraft.
Yes, sir.
How many times each year will the teachers be observed?
Avis, you want to take that?
They will have 2 30-minute observations and 4 walkthroughs a year.
Okay. Tell me about the difference between the walkthrough and the
A
observation.
walkthrough would maybe 10 to 15 minutes. You may not be looking for all the standards. You may actually be looking for 1 or 2 standards when you go in, but that's going to give you the whole totality of evidence as you finish off and you actually give them their evaluation. So you'll have the 4 walkthroughs, 10 or 15 minutes, and then you'll have the 30-minute evaluations 2 times per year.
I visited another state that's involved with Race to the Top, and I visited their educational agency and some of their teachers, and they were doing 7 evaluations, and they had a 20-page instrument they had to fill out before each one, and a lot of the schools had used their money to hire additional assistant principals to just work on the assessment. And I guess some of my questions, I've never really understood spending a lot of time assessing teachers who've been in the classroom for 15 years. I think that goes back to Representative Benton's comment. We need to know whether they can teach the first year or 2. And then the other thing, it puts tremendous stress on the classroom teachers when they know that people are going to walk in. And the focus of the classroom ought to be those young people in the classroom. And if you're a high school teacher and you have 100 and 120 students, and an elementary school teacher, I just don't, whatever we do, I don't want us to lose sight of where our focus needs to be.
Well, right now, we're working on getting a baseline for teachers, but I understand what you're talking about, the tiered model where you would really spend a lot more of your time on your new teachers or your teachers that may be struggling. So
I think that's a good point about after 2 or 3 years. If we don't know, we've missed the boat, I think, if we've let them get through there. All right, number 22. All right, he waves. Number 16. You wave. Okay. Thank you so much. And I want to finish up as you stay here, but I'll give you you want to say any final minute worth? So, Mr. Superintendent, you've done a great job, your staff.
Well, thank you very much. Did you want any of the information on the school climate stuff?
On the school climate? Yeah. We'll hold just a second. I want to do this, and we'll come back to it. Let me say this, though. I don't know about you. I've worked with superintendent and their staff. I agree with Margaret. I agree with Alicia, what they've done. They've done a great job, and I'm just proud of you. I think y'all have just done a tremendous job, and you're getting where we want to go, and we have a lot of faith in you. We really do, and we have a lot of faith, and I think it's going to happen for the first time in my 50 years. I'm pleased. Randy, you come up, and don't leave if you stay there because we want to talk a little bit about that. Randy chaired a committee this summer, and also Margaret chaired a committee this summer. And we want to Randy's committee ties in with the State Department and as well as Margaret. So Randy, go ahead.
All right. Am I on here?
Yeah.
One of the things that I had wanted to look at, and I'm sure that you as legislators have at one time or other been approached by teachers or parents and there was a concern about discipline in the schools. I've had it everything from a 3rd grade teacher telling me that she had a student that would lie down in the middle of the floor and scream all day, and there was nothing could be done about it. That's what I kept being told. Nothing can be done. Well, I had an opportunity to go talk to Dr. Gary McGibney, who is here today, and he's going to come and tell us a couple of things because there are some things that can be done. We have people who are trained to work with systems that can address some of these. It's not easy, especially with the special needs students, but my probably hour-long session with Dr. Gibney was very eye-opening, and I wanted him to share a few things with you, especially the legislators. So if you hear these things that nothing can be done, there are things that can be done to improve. And this is part of school climate. This is part of discipline. This is part of classroom
That's what I was
management.
going to click into.
So, Dr. McGibney, we've kind of boxed you into a very small period of time, but could you tell a little bit about PBIS, some of the things that are out there that y'all work with, please?
Yes, sir. I know it's late in the day, but this is an important topic, so I'll make haste slowly. I've talked to some teachers recently and asked them to comment about discipline, and many of them talked about, even in their colleagues, they view discipline as either we're too tough on discipline, we're either too tough on discipline or we're not tough enough, and that's sort of a conundrum. You have at your desk a PowerPoint presentation. If you'll just look just briefly at the one that talks about student discipline as multifaceted, because I think one of the problems we have with student discipline is that people view it as something that's very simplistic. Student misbehave, they're expelled. How complicated can that be? But if you look at the components on page 41 of your handout there, you'll see that student discipline is very complicated for a number of reasons. One, anytime you're dealing with human behavior, it's complex. Also, students and teachers and administrators and parents are dealing with environmental issues such as, health and family, drugs, gangs, etc. And also, with your own children, how difficult it is to be consistent with discipline. So imagine a school trying to deal with discipline. So there are inconsistencies that you have to deal with. Conflict of opinions about whether we're tough enough or not tough enough. Consequences of suspension, whether we like suspensions or not, the fact of the matter is that's lost instructional time. And as Representative Nix mentioned a while ago, people are not necessarily aware of Goss versus Lopez, United States Supreme Court decision in 1975 that says education is so important to a child it's a property right and therefore cannot be taken away without due process. So students are entitled to due process before they're suspended, and they're entitled to a large number of due process procedures before they can be suspended for more than 10 days. So all those factors on that slide that you're looking at are all part of student discipline and school climate. And here's the problem. Teachers will tell you they're having, one of the biggest problems they have is student discipline or student misbehavior in the classroom. Administrators will tell you the biggest problem they deal with all day is misbehavior in the classroom. But students, and I think this is important too, in the student health survey that we administer to 600,000 students in grades 6 through 12, 30% of those students say that misbehavior in the classroom is a problem. So it's not just the opinion of teachers and administrators. However, having said all that, look at slide number 43. Georgia ranks 9th in the nation in out-of-school suspensions. Over 130,000 students were suspended in the 11-12 school year. Another 195,000 were sent to in-school suspension. Of the 20 high schools in the United States that have the highest number of suspensions, 6 are from Georgia.
All from the same district.
Also, and this is also in the high over category, if you look on slide 44, schools with the highest graduation rates have the lowest suspension rates. Conversely, schools with the highest suspension rates have the lowest graduation rates. Students that are eligible for free and reduced lunch are twice as likely to be suspended from school. So you have the conundrum pointed out on slide 45, where we hear this all the time: the student discipline process is a pipeline to prison. However, student misbehavior is a serious issue and we have to do something about it. However, students suspended fall further and further behind in school. Along the same lines, as teachers and administrators will tell you, there's too much paperwork related to student discipline. But folks, that's related to the legal requirements that I mentioned earlier in that Supreme Court case. So it's a conundrum and it's not easy to deal with. So let's look at one thing that teachers and administrators and others agree on. If you look at slide 47, this is unusual agreement on one topic, frankly, with teachers and administrators, and that is that school climate is important. You'll see in a survey done by Quality Counts that just came out in January of this year that school climate is very important to student discipline and student achievement. 83% of the administrators said yes, and over 70% of the teachers said yes. So we have a point to work from to deal with this conundrum that we call student discipline. It's called school climate. And you'll see on 48, and I won't read that to you, some of their opinions about school climate from the American School Counselors Association. But what is school climate? Look at the next slide. It's those conditions of the school building, interactions between and among students, interactions of students and staff, the quality of instruction, parent participation, and the actual organizational structure of the school. And you'll see in the next couple of slides how important school climate is according to quality counts and other measures. Quality count pointed out that positive behavior intervention support is a strategy that's very, very effective in addressing school climate. And if you look on 51, I won't read that to you, that defines and explains what PBIS is. If you look at the next one, you can see who all endorses PBIS, positive behavior intervention support. It's a research-based strategy that improves school climate. And also, just very quickly, if you look on slide 53, it points out why traditional discipline measures typically don't work. And then compare that to the next slide of why PBIS has found to work. It addresses those issues. And since we're running out of time, let's look at the effectiveness. Look at the slide 55, Murray County School District, where you see their suspensions, their discipline incidents in 2009 to 2011-12 dropped from 3,500 to less than 2,000. And you can see on the chart when they implemented PBIS. Murray County's high school suspensions dropped from almost 180 to 60 over that period of time. In-school suspensions, you see, dropped from 1,000 to just a little over 200 when they implemented PBIS. They changed the school climate. Additional results, Spalding County School System, Spalding County High School, out-of-school suspension reduced by 32%. Dacula Middle School, discipline incidents reduced by 66%. Out-of-school suspensions, 24% reduction. Newton County High School, out-of-school suspension reduced by 15%. Savannah-Chatham High School, out-of-school suspensions county-wide, system-wide, reduced 41%. Middle schools reduced 26%. Gwinnett County's alternative school implemented PBIS, and in the alternative school, the number of incidents were cut in half because they changed the school climate. And if you look on slide 60, you'll see comments from administrators and teachers. In Georgia, we have 400 schools implementing PBIS. That's about 18% of the schools in Georgia, and you can see the map of where those are located on slide 61. How does that compare to other states? In Florida, 78% of their schools are implementing PBIS. In Illinois, 84% of their schools are implementing PBIS. In Maryland, which according to Quality Counts is the #1 state education system in America, 100% of their schools are implementing PBIS. Perhaps there's a correlation between school climate and student achievement. And I noticed recently Texas, and you'll see a slide there with Texas, they had convened a lot of people to work together on a statewide strategy to implement PBIS as a statewide strategy to improve school climate. The National Association of School Psychologists endorses PBIS not only because of student achievement and student discipline, but also because it improves student attendance. And I included, and we'll talk about this in just a moment, I included a couple of slides about student attendance, because when you change or improve school climate, we've noticed that school student attendance, improves. And look at, if you will, 65. This represents the number of students in Georgia that miss 15 days or more of school, 3 weeks or more of school. That's almost 10% of our students are missing 3 weeks or more of school. Look at the 8th graders. 12% of our 8th graders are missing 3 weeks or more of school. Now what does that mean? Look at the graduation rate. Look at slide 67. An 8th grader who misses no days of school, the graduation rate within 4 years is almost 82%. For that student who misses 3 weeks or more, it drops to 38%. That includes out-of-school suspensions. We have some schools in Georgia who have more out-of-school suspension absences than they do health-related absences. So you'll see there are other strategies on 68, not just PBIS. That's just one that we have found to be very effective, but there are others. As I stated earlier, it's multifaceted, it's very complicated. We're trying to get school systems to focus more on school climate, that there is something that can be done, that doing things the same old way is not working. If you want to go to Florida, you can't stay on 285 continuously. So at some point you have to get off. You have to change your behavior. Even though you're very familiar with it and there's some comfort zone in driving around, it's just not going where you want to go. And that's why we approach student discipline sometimes, because it's comfortable, because that's what we've done. So we're trying, and I praise you, Representative Nix, for starting the conversation so that we can change the conversation about the importance of school climate. And as Dr. Reichert mentioned earlier, we're serious about this change in the conversation, because oftentimes it's been said, what gets measured gets done. Well, school climate is going to be part of the measurement of the CCRPI. And also, because this is a complicated topic, education cannot do this alone. So if you look on slide 74, that's not a wish list. These are groups that we are working with, because these are groups that work with school systems. These are groups that work with parents. These are groups that help us convey the message of the importance of school climate. So Georgia Advocacy Office, we work with Ruby Moore and Leslie Liscombe. Georgia Appleseed, we work with Sharon Hill and Rob Rhodes. School Boards Association, Gale Association, with the new commissioner of BHDD, Frank Berry, we work with him and his deputy commissioner. The Anti-Defamation League, we've been working with Holly Levinson and Bill Nugget with that. Georgia Student Safety Center at Georgia State University with Dr. Myers, and also with the Institute of Public Health, because this also is a public health issue, school climate. So we work with Dan Crimmins at Georgia State. We work with Leslie Gill with the Girl Scouts of America. We work with the Mental Health Chapter of the Mental Health of America with Sarah Swartz. With the Carter Center, Dr. Borman, who is the Director of Mental Health at the Carter Center, and Lee Ellington, who's Assistant Director of the Carter Center. We've been working with them. In fact, we've been on the agenda for the last 4 years at their annual Mental Health Consortium. And you know what I'm talking about when they invite me to come and talk about mental health in the school climate. Thank you, sir.
I want to say thank you for coming and giving that. And when I went to speak to Dr. McGivney, I came away with somewhat mixed emotions. One is I went in thinking, like a lot of you do, that let's just get them out of the classroom. All we got to do is just out the door. Don't let it hit you as you leave. That doesn't happen. That was the thing that I wanted to speed up the process. But the thing that I came away with is there are ways to address these in the schools. And they're proven. PBIS is a system. It was interesting. A few days later, I was in a juvenile court judge's office talking about a different issue. And I brought up the fact that we had discussed school discipline. He turned me around and pointed to a board in the back of his office that had PBIS on it. He had already been discussing this. He was discussing this locally, where there are a lot of discipline issues. But it does address school climate. I think it even plays into soft skills. When students learn they've got to come every day, these absences decrease. I think they're learning a lot of different lessons that they're not learning under the old system. And I appreciate you doing that. And this is something that the DOE has people who can help systems who want this help to implement the PBIS system and others. But I just wanted y'all to know that if somebody comes to you and says there's nothing that can be done, that's not really true. There may be problems that are nuts that are hard to crack, but there are programs that can help with these systems. So thank you very much for
One
coming.
thing Randy and I found out too that shocked me. We met with the several school attorneys, and I was amazed at what we can't do with special ed. 12% of the population is really controlling the horse, and 88% of the population is subject to the federal whims and right. And we were just frustrated. They were tickled to death. They said it's the first time that the legislature's ever met with them about that, and they've given us some ideas, given Representative Nix some ideas of things that they would like to see done. They think could help that special needs discipline too, because that's a problem. You just can't. I mean, it's amazing what you can't do to special needs children.
and we have no legislation or anything to work on this, but we want to keep this dialogue
We're going to keep it going.
So this is an ongoing dialogue to hopefully find some things that do work, and this is something that I'm very sure works because I've already talked to some people who have used it. So that's maybe enough on this. You've got ideas, please.
All right. 2 quick comments. All right, I have number 8. Go ahead. You're on. Turn your microphone. There you go.
Thank you very much. In most of the metropolitan Atlanta area schools, they have resource officers because of bad behavior or criminal behavior, and then of course that's in the news too much about the dangers. There are some legislators who happen to think that teachers should have guns, and I don't agree, but there are some people who do that. So in your studies of behavior or in your discussions with the school board, what is your opinion on giving another huge responsibility to a teacher to arm them with guns?
They're not for discipline, but to what? Okay. Yeah, okay. You want to comment on that?
I'll let Dr. Barnes comment on that.
Thanks, Gary.
We're going to leave that for discussion.
You know, I don't think arming teachers is the best way to go.
Thank you.
Safety is an issue. I like school resource officers, having been a principal. I loved having that SRO in my building. But also having been a principal, I knew that there's some teachers that I wouldn't want to have a gun.
We have resource officers here today, but
we
I
have resource officers, and my sister-in-law happens to be the chief of the police for DeKalb County schools. She doesn't agree that they should have guns either, and I know that they are not trained for that. And my mother and father are retired from Atlanta Public Schools, and both of them were principals for a long, long time before they went into the area office, and I've taught too. So why would they not be? If they think that the crime is so huge, what about the, what do you call it, where they go, what we went through downstairs, the metal detectors, excuse me.
We're going to discuss, we're going to have a lot of discussion. I got to get it out. We're going to have a lot of discussion on that. Fred, did you have a comment? One comment, and then I'm going to go to Margaret, then we're going to adjourn.
Just a quick comment.
We're going to adjourn.
So if there are schools in the state that are having discipline problems, and this PBIS program is available through the Department of Ed, is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
The problem in a lot of the schools too, they know they have the discipline problems, but they're closed systems. They don't want to admit that there are problems, so they tend not to want the help, the additional help. They say, oh, we can handle it internally. That becomes a problem. But I really applaud you for this, and it's good to know that it's in place. So thank you very, very much.
And I think some of those districts will probably maybe change their tune.
Exactly.
When they realize that school climate is now on the face of
Key.
their school report card.
Exactly. This is very, very important.
All right, Margaret, you have Margaret's the last subject, then we'll let people ask you questions. Margaret, you go ahead, then I'll take some questions. All right, you go ahead.
You're ready for me to present?
You're number 10, yeah. I'm recognizing you for your committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be really brief because this is a process that's still very fluid, but it's a really important piece of legislation and issue. Many of you know concussion, the reality of concussions, the danger of concussions. So there is legislation that's been introduced in Georgia. There's 40 other states that have worked on legislation around this. The 40 other states that have done legislation are reflecting the guidelines that apply to NFL and the NCAA. So Senator Tippins and Senator Tippins, jump in after the chairman quits talking to you. Jump in if I'm leaving anyone out or you want to add anything. But Senator Tippins and I were charged with what seemed like a somewhat easy task originally, because people came and said, we hope you include cheerleaders. And I knew that my son is a cyclocross cyclist, and he races 30, 40 miles an hour next to trees, and I hold my breath. But so the importance is to really recognize the signs and the symptoms, and so this is an issue about return to play. So what Senator Tippins and I were charged with, and we held a meeting in December, had incredible, we thought we were going to convene a study committee, but we had one meeting and realized that this work is being done. There were stakeholders in this room, the CDC, Emory University, Georgia Concussion Coalition doing phenomenal work, and the National Football League was there as well. So we are, at this point, in the House, Representative Jimmy Pruitt and I will be co-sponsoring a return to play bill. Senator Tippins will carry it in the Senate. It is still a little bit fluid because what the issues are right now are the liability piece, the mandates, what do you encourage, what do you mandate. So we're trying to be very thoughtful and move very slowly in this process. But one of the most important keys is that there are 4 things that we have to address in Georgia, and we have to put the tools out there for these coaches and these organized sports to have. Most importantly, requiring the core principles being concussion education for youth athletes, parents, guardians, and coaches, the immediate removal of a youth athlete who is suspected of sustaining a concussion or brain injury in a practice game or tryout. Sometimes we forget about that. The third is clearance of that youth athlete by an appropriate licensed health care provider who's been trained in the evaluation and management of these brain injuries and returning to play. And then fourth is that we just have a statewide medically sound legislative requirement that ensures all of Georgia's youth, parents and coaches have the same access to information regardless of where they live and in what sport they're involved. So that's where we are. We hope to have something drafted this week and moving sooner than later.
Anything you want to say, Senator?
I think she covered it.
Yeah. Well, Senator, I'm going to tell you, we're going to dismiss this meeting. Before we go, I want to say next Wednesday, and we're going to do 2 of these. Now, we're going to be having meetings. I want the House to stay seated. About 5 minutes, we're going to convene, and we're going to give you the subcommittees and the work we've got ahead of us. But we'll be having a joint meeting next week that Senator Tippins will be hosting. You want to comment on that, the coming attraction? How wonderful it's going to be.
It will be breathtaking, I'm sure.
In this room, same time, same station.
No, it won't be same time. It's going to be 2:30.
2:30.
There's a scheduling problem with one of the speakers, and we're going to run from 2:30 till 4.
And what are your topics?
Pardon?
What's the topic?
We're going to talk about charter schools, and we're going to bring in principals from, or superintendents from different districts around the state who have implemented it, the challenges they faced. Obviously, different parts of the state and different size districts have different challenges, so we're going to have 3 different presenters.
That's where it's going to be, she said.
Okay. It's not going to be here. It's going to be in 5:06. But the joint meeting will be at 2:30. The Senate will meet earlier. It's kind of up in the air right now whether it'll be 1:45 or 2. But the Senate committee will meet just a few minutes before the joint meeting. But we'll be out of there by 4 o'clock. I'm not going to run late. I'm not going to run late.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm excited about having this gentleman to work with in the Senate subcommittee, Senate committee. I think we're going to have a good relationship. I'm glad to have you. Appreciate it. And meeting adjourned. Thank you all so much. House, stay just a second. We're going to convene now.